Hello everybody and welcome to another DVD Blu-ray collection update. Yes, I hope you have been enjoying my DVD Blu-ray collection overview videos. I really wanted to do this for a while now. I hope you all are enjoying it. But we got a lot to cover. The first one that we have here is Nobody's Fool. This is a pretty decent film with Paul Newman about a guy who he's had a lot of bad luck in his life, and so he tries to make amends for that with the arrival of his grandson. Pretty interesting movie. Jessica Tandy's in this one. Who else is in this? Melanie Griffith too. Yeah, it's a pretty decent film. Not a great movie, but it's well done. The Program from, when did this come out? 94? Yeah, I'm not entirely sure when it came out. Anyway, so The Program is basically every single football cliche imaginable, just set in the competitive world of college football. James Caan, actually I haven't finished this. Oh, Halle Berry's in this too. Oh my god. Halle Berry's in this. I haven't even finished it actually. I was actually watching this the day I got it, and so I never actually finished it. Weird. Next up, The Snows of Kilimanjaro. If you know Ernest Hemingway, then you know this movie. But if you know The Old Man and the Sea, For Whom the Bell Tolls, A Farewell to Arms, then you know Ernest Hemingway. So this movie right here with Gregory Peck and Ava Gardner basically involves a guy who he's in love with Ava Gardner, but then he falls in love with somebody else, played by Susan Hayward, and then he gets injured during an expedition. And it's kind of this awkward love triangle, really, set in the mountains of Kilimanjaro. Bernard Herrmann did the score. Darryl Zanuck was the producer, who, of course, if you know Darryl Zanuck, then. But this is a decent movie. I mean, it's a public domain movie, so of course you're gonna find a lot of copies. This one is by Diamond Entertainment. Swiss Family Robinson, or as I like to call it, the happiest movie ever. Let me explain. So this movie came out before Gilligan's Island and Lieutenant Robinson Crusoe USN, where a bunch of these people are stranded on an island and a lot of stuff happens, basically. So if you know, I keep hearing that there's like the Disney Movie Club, because they release exclusive like Blu-rays of these movies, but I haven't found a single one yet, so maybe that's just something I have to order online or something, I don't know. But anyway, Swiss Family Robinson, this is a movie where the Swiss Family Robinson is basically stuck on an island, and they're like, okay, great, let's thrive here. And then pirates show up. Okay, well, let's take out the pirates, and it's just, yeah, it's one of those movies. I'm trying to get, like, some of the classic Disney films. Spellbound. This is a documentary about these people, these young students who are competing in National Spelling Bee, and there's about 8 of them, and they're trying to get the last word literally, but they don't really. It's so nerve-wracking. And I didn't even realize that spelling bees were a sport until I saw this movie, and I was just like, oh, okay, well. So this is actually kind of a decent one, I'd say. It's a decent documentary. The spelling bee, they're showing the pressures of trying to get that last word. They're pushing themselves really hard. I'm not going to say who wins, but it's a pretty decent documentary overall. Next, we have The Story of Us with Bruce Willis and Michelle Pfeiffer. It's just the two of them throughout the whole movie. They play a married couple their kids are off to this camp, this summer resort. And it's just the two of them, and they're kind of asking themselves the questions of, do we want to stay in this relationship? Because we're thinking about getting a divorce. And we're thinking like, is this the end of our relationship, or do we want to like start over and just kind of see where our relationship goes from here? It's kind of an interesting film, really, by Rob Reiner. And I mean, it's just the two of them. There's no one else in the movie. I mean, Yeah, there are a couple scenes with other characters, but it's mostly just the two of them. And it's really hard to pull off a movie when you have one or two people in the same movie occupying the same space throughout the whole movie. It's really difficult. Um, so it's actually kind of decent. Sicko. I like Michael Moore. I think he's a pretty prominent documentary filmmaker. He talks about a lot of interesting topics. In this movie, he's talking about the healthcare system and how broken it is and how essential it is. So it's kind of this damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario. Yeah, but basically, he's the same guy who did Bowling for Columbine, which is a really good documentary. And he also did Fahrenheit 9/11 and Fahrenheit 11/9, which I'm going to pick that up at some point. Life Itself. This is a really good movie by Roger Ebert. He is probably considered the most popular film critic of all of them. Their show, sneak previews, and after movies with Siskel and Ebert, they were pretty inspirational for film buffs and film critics out there like Leonard Maltin and Robert Osborne and many other people that I look up to as far as those film critiques are concerned. So basically, like, I really admire his reviewing style, and some of my film critiques were inspired by him. So, or the way that I critique movies were partly inspired by him. But they were also inspired by other YouTubers and people on TV, other people on TV like Robert Osborne and Leonard Maltin. But this is a really good documentary right here. Another documentary, Steve Jobs, the Man and the Machine. So this is a very honest look at Steve Jobs. It's not a documentary that focuses on his accomplishments at Apple. It's more or less focused on him as a person. So if the guy who directed this also directed Going Queer. So if you know that documentary, then you know the guy who did this documentary. So another non-Blu-ray release called The Net with Sandra Bullock. I'm not really a Sandra Bullock fan, but I do like a couple of her movies. So basically, in this movie, she is involved in a internet conspiracy, but she meets this guy and they have a confrontation, and all of a sudden, her passport, her credit cards, her identity, everything is just deleted off of the computer system. And so she's trying to figure out what happened and why. That's basically the whole movie. Really well done thriller. It's a very common theme. It talks about identity theft. It's something that happens almost on a daily basis. I've known people who have had their identity stolen. I've known people who went through that. It's a very unpleasant experience. It's very damaging. It's a very damaging experience, but this movie delves into that theme. It's a pretty interesting film. Next up, we have Nick of Time. So Johnny Depp plays the father of his daughter who they're on this trip, and all of a sudden, his daughter is kidnapped by Christopher Walken, and he asks him to kill this politician, and he doesn't even know why. We don't even know why he is so hell-bent on trying to eliminate this politician, but he essentially says, like, you've got 80 minutes to take out this politician, or you will never see your daughter again. And so Johnny Depp is trying really hard to get out of it. This is a very scary situation where he's desperately trying to get out of it, but Christopher Walken's like, tick, tick, tick. And so it becomes, it's like a test of endurance, basically, because he's trying to get out of it, but he doesn't really know. He's trying every maneuver he can. He's trying to say him, like, please, you don't have to do this. You don't need to. This isn't even necessary. And so he's like, no, you have to do this, or you'll never see your daughter again. It's really intense. The movie is actually done in real time. The guy who directed this movie, John Badham, who also directed Saturday Night Fever, the way he did this was really clever because the movie is done in real time. So as the characters are going through this, everything that's happening in the movie, you're experiencing that at the same time as the characters in the movie, which is a really clever idea. I really liked how they did it. And then next up, we have a couple movies that I do know have Blu-ray releases, but I can't find them anywhere. Kiss Me Kate, one of the best MGM musicals to come out of the 50s. 1949. So basically, this is a musical on Taming of a Shrew. And if you know Taming of a Shrew, then you know Kiss Me Kate, basically. Kevin Grayson, Howard Keel, really well done. There's actually a sequence in here with Bob Fosse. Bob Fosse choreographed this particular sequence. It's kind of like where they're kind of like in the middle of this like green yellowish background, and they're in like court gesture type outfits, and they're like dancing. This whole sequence is really stylish and well done. So definitely check out Kiss Me Kate. The Unsinkable Molly Brown, another MGM musical, this time from 1964. This was kind of when the musical phase was fading a little bit. We had some really great musicals in the meantime. We had My Fair Lady, Sound of Music, Mary Poppins. We had those great musicals. But as far as the reigning kings of the movie musical, MGM was kind of, they were just kind of like, well, we're going to put out this and that. There was this one. The rest were basically just Elvis musicals. This movie is very loosely, and I mean extremely loosely, inspired by Molly Brown, the survivor of the Titanic. I'm just not, I don't know. I do want to give this another whirl, but interesting story with this movie. So Debbie Reynolds wanted to play this part so bad, and she talked to a director about it. She talked about wanting to do it, and they were like, well, the part's really small, and she said, how small is it? And so basically she pushed to get this part, and when she did. Next up, we have a movie that I saw on the last drive-in with Joe Bob Briggs, and that is Mayhem. Mayhem is intense. Okay, so Mayhem is basically this guy, Stephen Yin. His day sucks, but let's put it lightly. So he's about to be fired from his job when all of a sudden this virus breaks out in the office building, where it causes everybody to act out their most violent impulses. They're put on automatic lockdown in the entire building, and they only have, I think they only have like 8 hours before they're allowed to be released, because this virus it's only temporary. So they can keep everybody in the building in the meantime, then whatever happens in the building is just whatever. We're not going to prosecute anybody. So this gives our main character the opportunity to fight his way up to the offices of the hierarchies who let him go, and he's trying to get his job back. Whatever happens is anything goes. Crazy movie. A double feature, White House Down and Olympus Has Fallen. Both movies deal with the idea of an attack on the White House, which at the time was an implausibility, but ever since what happened with the Capitol, yeah. So I did not get this for White House Down. I actually got this for Olympus Has Fallen, because White House Down is one of the stupidest action movies I have seen in a long time. The last time I saw something like that was Transporter 2, a movie that is so devoid of logic and reasoning that it baffles my mind. And I know some people prefer that, but I like my action movies to be smart, not completely incompetent. I don't even want to talk about plot because it's so stupid. Like, you're telling me that these criminals, one of them played by Jason Clarke, you're telling me that they have been hiding in the White House for a while, planning this attack on the Capitol. None of the security guards in the White House were able to spot them. Nobody was able to spot their strange behavior. Like, you're seriously telling me that? And then there's like one scene where like these helicopters are like flying over the city that's right next to the White House. These helicopters are flying too low, and the missiles that they are shooting and the the missiles that they're firing, yeah, it would totally cause damage. It would totally cause damage. So this movie is so watchable enough. I could go on and on, but it's just a terrible movie. I've heard Olympus Has Fallen is much better, but man, it's just so stupid. White House Down. The Prestige. This movie is a well done film. A really good mystery film. I like this movie better than The Illusionist, which came out the same year. Both movies dealt with the theme of magicians. So basically this movie, Christian Bale and Hugh Jackman play two magicians who, after a freak accident during one of their shows, they are now rivals, and so now they're trying to compete with one another. They're trying to out-trick one another. There's a lot of, Dishonor Wolf actually introduced me to this one. He mentioned it on his Aquaman video, which I'll talk about later. I actually am going to see this again, because he mentioned the ideas behind it are so pre-contextualized. I don't really know what that means. But you have to see it more than once. So basically, The Prestige is 3 acts. The Pledge, The Trick, The Prestige, meaning the finale. And the movie flows in that sort of way. Like, it starts with a build-up, then the whole twist, and then the grand finale. So check this out if you've never seen it before. Quirks. Oh dear God, I love this movie. I love Quirks. Okay, so let's see, this guy right here, this guy, I'm blanking on his name. So this guy, it's his day off, right? It's his day off from work at the drugstore or gas station, I think. And so he shouldn't even be here. But his boss calls him and tells him that he needs to go to work. And he's like, no, wait a minute, it's my day off. I'm not supposed to go to work today. And so his boss demands that he goes to work. And everything that goes wrong. It's a movie that shows just the stuff that happens when you're at your job and stuff goes downhill and you don't know like why, just all the things that go wrong. It's crazy. It's a hilarious. His friend, this guy, he owns a video store next door, and so this is hilarious. And he's just the funniest guy in the movie. Jay and Siren Bob are here. One of them played by the writer and director of the movie, Kevin Smith. Oh my God, this movie is just hilarious. I do have a sequel, which I've shown you before. Knives Out. This is one of the best mystery films to have come out in recent years. Yes, I know this cover's not very good. There we go. So, Knives Out. I should have done a video on this when I have a chance, but let me fix that right now. So basically, Knives Out. Christopher Plummer plays the head of this wealthy family, and so he owns this mansion. And so he gets killed, and this one woman, blanking on her name, she thinks that she did it. Daniel Craig, who's an investigator, he's like, no, you didn't. But she wants to figure out. So Daniel Craig has this notion that everyone has a motive. Every single one of you, including Jamie Lee Curtis, Don Johnson, Michael Shannon, Chris Evans, every single person in this room was involved. Every single person was involved. Everyone had some kind of a motive. And so you're trying to piece together who did it, who murdered Christopher Plummer, who murdered Christopher Plummer's character. So it's kind of interesting. It's Rian Johnson, the guy who single-handedly created a rift in the Star Wars fandom, wrote and directed one of the best modern whodunits in a long time. So that's quite an accomplishment. When you actually do find out who did it, it can be a little gimmicky, but then you realize, oh, I thought I had it figured out, but I really didn't. And that's what makes a good murder mystery. Suicide Squad. So Suicide Squad is... My friends and I, we watched this recently because the new one was coming out. we rewatched this movie. We actually watched the extended version. It's terrible. I don't like this movie. Basically, so Viola Davis rounds up these supervillains: Harley Quinn, Deadshot, and these other villains. So basically, they are called upon to stop the Enchantress from taking over the entire world. So the Enchantress was under Viola Davis's control, but then she made a really stupid mistake by leaving her in a hotel room unlocked and unsupervised, and so now she finally decided to break loose, and now the supervillains have to stop her. It's just a really stupid plot. I'm sorry. This movie is terrible. I remember I saw this in 2016 when it first came out, and I was just kind of like, oh, this is actually kind of good. And then as my taste matured, so did my view on certain movies that I liked at the time. But now I'm just kind of like, If you are going to watch this, I recommend you watch the extended cut because it shows more of Harley Quinn's relationship with the Joker, which was hardly ever mentioned in the theatrical cut. So, but even with the extended cut, the tone is all over the place. Like 1 minute it wants to be funny, and then the next minute it wants to be dark and serious. But logical inconsistencies are everywhere. The main characters' bios are like reading a baseball card. So you hardly get to know them, basically. Outside of, I think, this flame guy who, he kind of has a sad backstory, but other than that, it's kind of like these characters' backstories are basically glanced over, and it's just wildly inconsistent. When the director of his movie, David Ayer, said that he does not like his movie, when a director says that they don't like their movie, that's a problem. When they boycott their own movie, that's a bad sign. So, yeah, I don't know. I didn't see the new one, but, yeah. The Jerk. So, I mentioned this movie in my Carl Reiner tribute. I really like this movie. I do. I'm not really a Steve Martin fan, but I liked this movie. It came out in 1979, and basically Steve Martin plays a guy who, as a child, was adopted into this African-American sharecropper family, and so he wants to make it up to them by, becoming an entrepreneur, basically. He wants to make him proud, essentially. But, so it's like rags to riches to rags. I'm not going to reveal the rest of it, but it's funny. The main character is very naive, but he's full of energy. Pretty decent film. Bernadette Peters is in this too. Jackie Mason's in it as well. Next up, we have a rare one. The Swarm. Yes, The Swarm. Okay. Irwin Allen is probably the godfather of the disaster genre. His films, including The Poseidon Adventure, Tower and Inferno, they're considered some of the best disaster movies of all time. So when The Swarm came out in 1978, it was so panned across the board. But I remember a friend of mine showing me this movie, and I didn't think anything was wrong. But then again, I hadn't seen it since then. We have an impressive cast here. In all Irwin Allen's movies, they have a large ensemble cast. So let me see if I can remember. Okay. Henry Fonda, Michael Caine, Olivia de Havilland, Patty Duke, Fred MacMurray, Cole Malden, Henry Fonda, Fred MacMurray, Patty Duke, Calvin Ross. That's what. Richard Chamberlain. I kept blanking on his name. Oh my god. Okay. Calvin Ross, Richard Widmark, Ben Johnson, Richard Chamberlain, Slim Pickens, Jose Ferrer, Reed Grant. It's like I get like half the names, and then I just kind of like, who are the others? I just remember it was a disaster horror film involving a killer swarm causing the apocalypse. That's basically the only thing I remember from that. Mortal Kombat. Dun, 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 dun. It's funny, my friend actually showed me the 2021 movie and I liked it. And then I saw this movie literally, and then I saw the original movie literally the next day. And depending on my mood, I will either say that the first adaptation is better than the new one, or I'll say that the new one is better than the first adaptation. Video game movies have come a long way. Before, nobody really knew what they were doing. Super Mario Brothers, Double Dragon, Street Fighter. Those movies were more like adventure, family, sci-fi, action movies with video game characters thrown in as the main characters. Now we have Mortal Kombat, and things get really interesting because this was the first attempt at actually trying to replicate the game into a movie. Like, everything's here. Earth Realm, Outworld, the characters, Raiden, Liu Kang, Shang Tsung, Goro. I mean, the environments look like the games. The fighting style is a little bit like the games. The only thing they don't have is the fatalities. And that's because they were trying to make it more accessible for a wider audience, which the new one does not do that, which is good. But still, regardless, it's a decent movie. Excuse me. It's a decent movie. I enjoyed it. I don't have Mortal Kombat Annihilation for obvious reasons. Next is The Post. So, Steven Spielberg is considered one of the best filmmakers ever. His films are very influential in every genre. The Post is a film that deals with the Washington Post papers. The New York Times were supposed to have published him. The papers that were published by the Washington Post revealed that the 5 of our presidents in the past before Richard Nixon knew of our involvement with Vietnam. And so the New York Times was supposed to have published it, but they backed out on it. So the Washington Post, essentially, they were going back and forth about publishing them. It's a really well done movie. Tom Hanks, Meryl Streep. If you watch this movie and then All the President's Men back to back, it could be like a really good history lesson on how the Watergate scandal came to be. Godzilla, yes! I did a whole video on this, so Godzilla, Kingdom of Monsters, yes! I did a whole video on this, so I'm just gonna move on. But this is, I think this movie's better than the 2014 one. Gretel and Hansel. Now, this is a horror film it tells the story of Hansel and Gretel. But the thing is that it's very surreal. It's a very surreal film. It has this interesting cinematography style, almost like an A24 movie, but it's not. It's very atmospheric, very creepy at times, very slow. But if you like movies with a lot of build-up and a lot of suspense, then you really enjoy it. The only thing I don't like about this movie is that it's too short. It's only like an hour and 28 minutes, but I felt like it should have gone on just a little longer. Maybe they didn't want to overstay their welcome, but I just feel like it could have been longer. The witch in this movie is really creepy. It's a very creepy film. It's different kind of horror story, like a fairy tale horror movie. It's kind of interesting. Another movie that I've been trying to find a Blu-ray for a while, but anyway. The Missouri Breaks. The only movie that Jack Nicholson and Marlon Brando ever did together. Jack Nicholson is a horse thief. And so this horse rancher, he's sick and tired of his horses getting stolen all the time. And so at some point in the movie, he calls Marlon Brando, who's like a preacher bounty hunter, kind of. Marlon Brando is this like preacher bounty hunter who has very odd tastes when it comes to getting his man, if you know what I mean. There's a lot more to it, but I don't want to take too much time. I don't want to dwell on this movie too much. 4 Christmases. I did not watch this movie this year, but I watched it last year, and it was a relatively okay movie. Basically, Vince Vaughn and Reese Witherspoon play a divorced couple who they always try to find a way to get out of seeing their parents. They hop on a plane every single year, but this year all flights are canceled, and so now they have no choice but to see their relatives, and it's crazy. So now they have to see 4 families, 4 Christmases over the course of a single day. So that means they only have like 2 hours a day to spend with them. And it gets crazy. It's another one of these like mean-spirited Christmas movies, and in the same vein as films like A Christmas Story and A Merry Friggin' Christmas. Yes, that's the title. And Fred Claus. But it's an okay movie. Phantom Thread. Paul Thomas Anderson. I like his work. I liked Boogie Nights. I liked Inherent Vice. I also liked, well, there's another one I liked, which is this one. So Daniel Day-Lewis plays a fashion designer who he's married to Leslie Manville, but his model, played by Vicky Creeps, he's more drawn to her than his wife. This puts a lot of strain on all 3 characters. It's really well done. The costume design is amazing. Mark Bridges, who did the costumes, very elegant, very stylish, very chic too. Definitely check this film out if you haven't seen it. It's absolutely worth it. Now, Aquaman, I saw this movie in theaters. I saw this in IMAX. And I liked it. But I haven't seen it since then, though. But DCEU is so problematic and so flawed that it's more or less... It desperately needs a reboot. It really does. Dishonored Wolf did a whole video where he basically deconstructed every single inconsistency with it. Yes, it's stupid sometimes. Yes, it's illogical. But there are times where it's actually really good. But then again, I haven't seen this since it came out, so this is one of the better DCEU movies, which is actually really sad because the only good DCEU movie was Wonder Woman, which we'll get to later. Gemini Man. So Gemini Man, I did a whole video on this one too. Directed by Ang Lee. It's actually a really good action film, like I will admit. Will Smith playing himself and a younger version of himself. It's really interesting how they were able to do it this time. Jarhead. So Jarhead is essentially the true story of this soldier who gets sent to Operation Desert Shield. And they've been there in the desert for months, even years, and they've never seen a single ounce of battle. And Jamie Foxx is the drill sergeant. He's like, you will hydrate, you will train, you will adjust to this desert, and you will hydrate some more. Your mission is to kill me. My mission is to kill you first. You will maintain a constant state of suspicious alertness. It's basically about soldiers just fighting boredom. That is essentially what this movie is. It's about soldiers fighting boredom. And once Operation Desert Storm happens, it only lasts a week. And then it's like, war is over! Woo! Okay, big problem with this movie, and it's a big inaccuracy, is that the soldiers are blood hungry in this movie, despite the fact that even though they're trying to fight off boredom, they're not like this. You know, they're not blood hungry, they're not bored out of their minds, they're gonna party all day long. That's not true. Arnold Schwarzenegger free comedy pack. So I actually got this for Twins. Twins is actually a really good movie. Basically, it deals with Arnold Schwarzenegger plays, going against typecasting. He plays a genetically modified human being who he finds out that his mom, who he's trying to find out more about his mom. Essentially, he's trying to understand who she was. He also finds out that he had a brother played by Danny DeVito. And so they're trying to reconnect with one another. It's a really interesting film. Schwarzenegger is so naive and doesn't understand how the world works, but you catch on to his charm. You catch on to, he's a good guy. He just doesn't understand a lot of things because he's been in this laboratory for most of his life. The set also has Kindergarten Cop and Junior. Junior, I'm not looking forward to, but I am going to watch Kindergarten Cop. I think Twins has been issued on Blu-ray before, but not. Next up, we have a Tombstone. This is actually a really good Western about Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday. So it's another movie that's trying to tell the story of the Battle of the OK Corral. It's very romanticized in a way that I don't know, it's hard to explain. I don't know how accurate this movie is, but this is actually the director's cut, which has only ever been issued on DVD. There was another movie about Wyatt Earp that came out the same year called Wyatt Earp with Kevin Costner, but I haven't seen that yet, so I can't make a fair comparison. It's a decent movie. I really liked it. Kurt Russell, Val Kilmer, a pretty well done Western. Even if it is kind of romanticized. We don't know exactly if all the things that happened in the movie did happen. We don't really know for sure. But other than that, it's a decent film. I saw this movie on TCM and I was like, oh my god, I gotta find it. The Last Voyage. A movie that was only issued on DVD, but it's great. This was also put out on Warner Archive, also on DVD, but it's excellent. Check this movie out, please. So this movie came out before the Poseidon Adventure. And the funny story with this movie involves the ship in the movie. It was named the Ile de France, which set sail in 1926. So when this movie was made around 1959 and released in 1960, they wanted to use a real ship for the destruction of the ship. They didn't want to use a model. And so the director of this movie, Andrew Stone, he went searching for a ship and he found this ship called the Ile de France that was about to be decommissioned. And he talked to the person that was in charge of this, and he said, could I borrow your ship for our movie since you're going to destroy it anyway? So I figured since you're not going to use the ship anymore anyway, I figured I might as well use it for my movie. Would it be okay if I use your ship to destroy the ship for my movie? To which they said yes. I know I'm paraphrasing, it's not the exact wording. As the movie goes on, as the ship is being destroyed, you're actually seeing the real ship getting destroyed in this movie. It's really interesting how they were able to pull it off, how they were able to destroy a ship live on camera. It's really interesting. If you're a fan of Poseidon Adventure like I am, do yourself a favor and do not miss The Last Voyage. 13 going on 30. I don't know where a Blu-ray this is. Anyway, taking the idea big. I don't have much to say about this one. I'm not a fan of Jennifer Gardner. There are a couple movies of hers I like, this being one of them, and that's actually kind of annoying. So basically, this movie takes the idea big, about somebody who wishes that they were an adult, but they don't realize how much responsibility being an adult is. So she's 13, she has this house, and then I guess she put glitter on the house and then wished that she was 30. Stuff happens, and I think you know the rest. It takes the idea big. I don't even know what to say about that one. Next up, a rare movie, Too Many Girls. Too Many Girls was a college musical. It was a Broadway musical, and then it became a movie. What's funny, I saw Beaver Ricardo's a few days ago, and they mentioned how bad this movie was. And I'm just like, why is it so bad? This is a movie in which Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz met. Lucille Ball was doing another movie at the same time as this movie, and so she was kind of going back and forth between two films. And Desi Arnaz, this was his first film coming all the way from Cuba after a family tragedy. And the two of them met and they married a few years later. Really well done. By today's standards, I mean, some people may not like it, some people will, but it's a good movie. If you are a Lucille Ball fan and you want to know how she met her future husband, Desi Arnaz, watch that movie. Fun with Dick and Jane. Now, this is the original movie. I know there's the Jim Carrey one. That's one everyone saw. But this is the one that I think you should watch instead. George Segal gets fired from his job, and so they're trying to make things work. But when they go to a bank, they realize that, they accidentally took some money from a bank because of a robbery that was taking place. And so they decide, why don't we get more money this way? And so they decide to rob nearly $2,000 over the course of a few weeks, and then they get back to being rich. So it's a satire on the 1% and basically what what measures they have to take in order to still being a 1%. It's Jeff Who Lives at Home. Jeff Who Lives at Home is a movie where, it's been a while since I've seen this, but basically it's about a main character who, he lives by himself in his house and he's trying to figure out what life is. It's independent, pretty decent. Dragon Slayer, a movie that does not have a Blu-ray release, but man, is it awesome. This is a really good one. There's not much in terms of plot. I mean, it's not amazing or anything. It's not like the best ever, but it's underrated for sure. So there's not much happening in terms of plot, Dragon is terrorizing village, hero has to stop him, blah, blah, blah. But what's interesting about this movie is actually the effects. It was partly funded by Walt Disney Productions, partly. They were doing this at the same time as the Popeye movie with Robin Williams and Robert Altman. So basically, they were using a process known as GOMO, one of those names, where it looks animated, but it's actually stop motion. So it's like stop motion animation, animatronic stop motion, basically. So it makes the dragon look alive, like it's really there. So it's really interesting how they were able to pull it off. Production design's pretty good. It's well done, even if there's not much happening in terms of plot. MacArthur. Not good. So, the reason why I have a DVD of this is because, according to the reviews I've read, the Blu-ray and DVD in terms of the print of the movie are pretty much identical. This movie's about General Douglas MacArthur, his times during World War II and the Korean War. The problem is that the script is so flimsy with inaccuracies that it's not very good. Even Gregory Peck, who plays MacArthur, noticed that there are problems with the script. And when he's not usually known for picking bad scripts. So why he was handed this, I don't know. But he does a decent job as MacArthur, but there's inaccuracies in here. One inaccuracy involves this battle that took place on this island in 1944. Franklin Roosevelt asked him to invade this island, which he said was taking place in September of 1944, not October. There's stuff in here that's just not even accurate at all. But it's an okay movie. Ronin. There is a Blu-ray of this, but there are no extras. Arrow put this out, but it's like $80, and I'm like, I'm not doing that. So I just settled for this 2-disc collector's edition, which remastered in high definition. Anyway, Ronin is a pretty decent action film. It's a pretty decent action film with Robert De Niro. It's interesting how they kind of used the idea of the term Ronin as like a samurai. The term Ronin means like a samurai. So it's interesting how they used the idea of a samurai with an action movie. It's kind of interesting. I'm blanking on what the plot is, but basically there are these operatives known as Ronin. They have to steal a briefcase. They don't know what this briefcase contains. They don't know what it's about. Why are they stealing it? They just know they have to steal this briefcase. Otherwise, chaos will ensue. It's a decent action movie. John Frankenheimer directed it. And that is it. I kind of want to film these and just kind of get them out of the way so that when I organize my collection next, I'll at the very least know what I got. So, hope you've enjoyed it, and until next time, see you later.